Hello and welcome to Oddspedia Premier League match day 32. I think, Tom Rennie, you were spot on last video when you said that the season could be too long for Liverpool, and lucky them that there is no chaser. Basically, they are just alone on the top.
Yep, I was frustrated the weekend because they were the third team in my three-team treble. I was going for 4 in a row and I was let down by Liverpool at Fulham, but it did feel like something might happen. And if Arsenal had bought a striker 10 months ago, we could have an amazing title race, but they didn't, so we don't.
Exactly, Gabriel Jesus Havertz missing the whole season. So Arsenal are really far away, 11 points away from Liverpool. I think overall, this Premier League season has been a little bit poor in terms of the title race, not as exciting as some other seasons. But, well, this is my opinion. And in the meantime, of course, we can make some money, and the Champions League race is very, very interesting. So, guys, of course, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And talking about the Champions League race, we start with Man City, Crystal Palace. I guess people were bored, disappointed by the Manchester derby, although the expectations were not too high. Tom, still a goalless draw. And now Man City is struggling to get even in the top 5. And be careful, because Crystal Palace can be very dangerous. They are in great form, 4 wins and 1 draw in the last 5 Premier League games.
Yeah, love this game. Love this game. Tremendous potential. I'll admit something to you, Edu, and our viewers. I am a football addict. I'll watch any game of football, maybe anywhere, anytime. On Sunday, I got to about 60 minutes into the Manchester derby, and I just walked away. I turned it off. I don't know how the last half an hour went, because it was so just drab and eventless. And it just felt like two teams getting to the end of this season so they can start again. That's kind of what United have been for a long time. We don't expect that so much from Man City, but it even feels like they've sort of given up to a point on this season. It's now the 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗀 farewell tour, and that's all it ever was. So look, the home form's not been great. The overall form has not been great. It's 2 wins in the last 5 for Man City going into this one. Goals have been a problem to come by in the absence of Erling Haaland. We know the midfield issues with Rodri missing, and with Ake and Akanji and Stones missing. The defence has been a bit of a mess. The only bright spot really for City is the form of Omar Marmoush. I know he was a bit nothing in the Manchester derby, but overall his form has been great. He's been scoring goals, he's been creative, and so look, there's every chance he has a blistering, belting opening 20 minutes here, and they go on to win this game comfortably. But Crystal Palace right now, once again, for the second time this season, the team you do not want to face in this division, and away from home, they're the 6th best team in the country. 6 victories and 5 draws in that team, in that team as well, and some really significant 2-0 wins as well. They go to places, they get victories, 3-0 in the Cup, 2-0 at West Ham, 2-0, I think, Brentford. They're just very competent away from home. The defence is strong. The midfield is tough to bypass. The fullbacks / wingbacks are able to competently play in midfield in a way that, for example, at Man United, it's not quite worked. And offensively, if all fit, Sarr, Eze and Mateta is about as good as you're going to get outside the top 3 or 4 teams. So, look, I cannot see any value here on betting on Manchester City at all. So let's take a punt together. Let's go for it. Crystal Palace, who've got a very good record against Manchester City, to win at Manchester City, as we record this, is 5.75 for the 6th best away team in the country, with 6 away wins and 5 draws this season. That seems incredibly high, playing against a team with their 2 best players, more or less, Haaland and Rodri, unavailable. You can also get, if you feel really brave, both teams to score and Palace win for 9. But I think the Palace win's probably enough. I'll take a punt on that.
Well, now it's 6.10 actually, 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗍𝐻. So check Oddspedia, of course, for the highest odds, but they are very high, very disappointing. This Man City, of course, adding up their pinch of salt of this Premier League, in my opinion. Not too exciting. Brighton, Leicester City is the next game. Brighton is still with some options to go to Europe, but pretty thin, actually, after losing to Crystal Palace, also 3-0 to Aston Villa at home, and the knockout of the FA Cup. But of course, Tom, they are playing Leicester. Leicester going down, so they should win.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's against Leicester, so they win, right? But let's briefly talk about Brighton. I think their performance against Crystal Palace was a real nadir of the season last weekend. It went as we predicted in terms of Crystal Palace winning it. I didn't predict that Palace would end with 9 men and Brighton would end with 10, but maybe in the vociferous derby that is Brighton against Palace, we should have done. But I just think there's one or two things lacking with Brighton. Firstly, they've had so many players injured across the season. Van Hecke will be suspended here. Webster is injured. Rutter is injured. Igor has missed basically the entire season. So has Milner. 𝗀𝗏𝗿𝗀man's been missing. And a thin squad can only compete for so long. And now they've become a bit directionless, a little bit aimless. They are on a massive wobble right now, Brighton. And I think there's every chance they may well miss out on European qualification because of it. No wins in 3 going into this one. They have got an over-reliance on Danny Welbeck to score goals for them. Scored again against Palace. João Pedro goes in fits and splutters and starts. It's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward with Brighton. Are they the kind of club that are going to invest in the 3 or 4 positions necessary to push on to maybe top 5 next season? Or will they do what they always do and sell their best players to like Chelsea and have to do it all over again? We'll see how it goes. In terms of Leicester, I mean, what a waste of time this season has been all the way through. Ruud van Nistelrooy, the worst thing about the loss against Man City last weekend, I don't know about the Newcastle game, but the Man City one, when they'd lost, the Leicester players went over to the Leicester fans and were clapping and like they're embarrassed, but you know, fans have travelled, it was midweek, all that. Where's Ruud van Nistelrooy? What's he doing? Oh, he's over by the dugout shaking hands of several Man City players because he's just like a celebrity tourist at Leicester City. He should never have got the job, should have sacked him months ago, but they just gave up Leicester. And you see that in every single performance, and you'll see it again here. So take the Brighton win. Best was 1.25. That may have fluctuated a bit, but that's what it was this morning. Both teams to score, and Brighton win is 2.88. I do that because so many Brighton games have been both teams to score this season. Across 31 games, it's 49 scored and 47 conceded. The overall stats and the individual eyeball test bears that out. You can also get a group bet of 2-1, 3-1 or 4-1 for Brighton at a really good 4. So I'll take that.
Well, much more interesting in the next game, Nottm Forest, Everton. Forest is still third, although they lost to Aston Villa. And Everton, another draw, as we spoke actually in our videos. 5 draws in the last 6 games, usually even 1-1, 14 draws this season.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Nottm Forest. I thought that their opening 20 minutes against Aston Villa were really poor. I think the ensuing 70, they were very, very good. And if they'd have had Chris Wood to take one of the numerous chances they had against Villa, if Anthony Elanga didn't go off at half-time, there's every chance they would have come from behind to beat Villa. Most chances seem to fall to Elliot Anderson, who couldn't find the back of the net at the weekend. But overall, another encouraging performance to go with an entire season of good performances. And look, at home, they're the 3rd best team in the country overall. The 3rd best team in the country, just 2 defeats in the entirety of the season at home, 9 victories, 4 draws. Lots of positivity around sort of Nottm Forest and what they can do. And look, still no Chris Woods. That's a problem. Don't know about 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀 going into this one as yet. I was surprised to see him not in the squad against Villa, so I'm assuming it's just a light injury he's picked up, and they did miss that focal point attacker. If they can get 𝗵𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗀 and Elanga and Hudson-Odoi together, as they like to have around the striker, that will give a more impressive offensive lineup. Plus, they changed to 3 at the back against Villa, which really failed in that opening 20 minutes and cost them the game. In terms of Everton, yeah, their run of results is hilarious. 1-1, 1-1, 1-1, 1-0 loss, 1-1 going into this game. Look, David Moyes, a little bit like Graham Potter at West Ham, a little bit like 1 or 2 others that come in mid-season. Not much to play for. They've just been told, stop conceding goals, get us some points, get us to 35 to 40, and we'll never speak of this again. And he's done that really well. He had that great moment in the Merseyside derby to get the draw at home. He's had some really impressive draws. Wolves away, Brentford away, Arsenal at the weekend just gone. They lack obvious things. Everton, which we've spoken about a lot, creativity, goal scoring, all that sort of stuff. But they don't lack for endeavour and organisation. So this is going to be a really, really tight game of football. I wouldn't discount the draw. I wouldn't discount 1-1, but I will just shave for Nottm Forest to win. Got 2 at the moment, but go on the under score lines here. There's not going to be more than 2 goals in this match. It'll be 1-0, 2-0, or 1-1. Those are your options. Take Forest and under 2.5. That's 3.75. A tight Forest win or a 1-1 draw. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly, correct. The score 1-1 is paying off for the Toffees this season. Next one is Southampton, Aston Villa. This could be a tricky game for Aston Villa if we take in consideration that is coming in the middle of the tie with PSG in the Champions League. But Southampton are so poor, 25 defeats this season, and Villa are so great for wins in the last 5 Premier League games that, of course, Tom, I guess we should go with Aston Villa.
Even just saying 25 defeats this season with so much of the season to go is just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. Like, you get that in, you cover all the leagues here, right? You do get the last couple of teams in Italy, the last couple of teams in Spain. They tend to lose 70, 80% in their games. It doesn't actually happen that much in England. This is why people talk about Derby County in 2008 and Sunderland a couple of years later under Mick McCarthy, I think 2011, because it's so historic when it happens. So to be relegated at the start of April with 25 defeats is jaw-droppingly shocking. There's nothing Southampton have got right this season, from player signings to managerial appointments, all of it absolutely useless. And I don't expect them to pick up another point this season. I really, really don't. They're on 10. I think they'll finish on 10, and they're going to get mullered here. I know Villa have got the Champions League. However, I think it was 8 changes from the midweek Premier League to the weekend Premier League. They have a really deep squad. Anyone who starts against PSG in midweek can be rotated for the weekend, such as the depth of their squad. And if you're like, oh, I might not play 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐴 and I'll bring in 𝗵𝗵𝗏, for example, absolutely fine against Southampton. So go for the Villa win, obviously. Odds aren't great, 1.55. Then look at your handicaps. I think they're going to win this 3-0 or more. So minus 2.5 was a really decent 5, actually, for Aston Villa. Get minus 1.5 at 2.5, but take the minus 2.5. Really good money in this. And then even start getting more extravagant, if you like. I wouldn't be surprised with Southampton now relegated if Villa win this 5-0.
Well, it could be even more tricky for Arsenal, even if they have the long tie against Real Madrid playing on Tuesday. There is enough time to recover until Saturday and then until Wednesday again. But Brentford are really dangerous when they are playing away. Drew with Chelsea because they are not winning at home, but away. Lost to Newcastle, the last one, true, but they won the previous 5. And Arsenal with so many injuries and, of course, thinking in the Champions League, Tom.
Yeah, look, I think this is a tricky one for Arsenal. Not in the same way of like Southampton, as you mentioned. I think if the season had something riding on it, I think this could be a really, really tough game for Arsenal. The truth is they blew it in the summer not buying a striker, and they will not be able to capitalise on Liverpool's wobble. They're not going to get caught by Forest behind them, so it's sort of irrelevant. So depending on the performance and the result on the Tuesday, there's every chance they might make heavy rotation. But if they're out of the water already by the time we get to this game, we'll see what they do. I'd expect to see Saka for 45 minutes. I'd expect to see Miguel Moreno continue up front. I'd expect to see them testing out a centre-half to replace Gabriel. Is Ben White going to be fit? If he is, I'd probably pop him in there. If not, maybe Jurrien Timber. Can't play 𝐬𝐭𝐿𝐴, just not good enough to be Arsenal's central defender going into a Premier League game, let alone Champions League. So, interesting squad selection here going into this one. I would expect a decent rotation, but the squad actually isn't that deep, which again is a significant problem when it comes to Mikel Arteta. In terms of Brentford this season, what's funny is this could have been a great campaign. The way they won those home wins start of the season, was very impressive. You mentioned the recent away run they have been on. And look, we do it a lot. They're better than the bottom half. They're not as good as the top half. But that not as good as the top half is really something to stew on for Thomas Frank, because they could have got up this table. They could have got into European contention. And 𝗵𝗲𝗀's great. 𝗿𝗏 is great. Love Norgard. Big fan of Nathan Collins. Flecken's a good keeper. They've got 5 or 6 really good top half or better players. And yet they kind of sit in obscurity in 12th. They've never really gone up the table. They've never fallen down the table. They've just sort of been here. And you go, oh, yeah, they had a good start, didn't they? Where are they? Oh, nowhere. Okay, fair enough. So, look, in the end, they've done well to not be in a relegation scrap. I think they would have wanted more out of this season, Brentford. So, look, great chance for them here with Arsenal midway through Real Madrid. But I still think Brentford have struggled against the good teams across the season. We saw it against Newcastle. We saw it against Aston Villa in recent times. We even saw it to a degree against Chelsea at the weekend. I don't think Brentford will win. Take the Arsenal win and look at the under scorelines here. Arsenal do what they did or tried to do against Everton, did do against Fulham, did do against Chelsea. Nick a goal, keep it tight, play the percentages, entertain nobody and get 3 points. So win to 0, 2.63. Under 2.5 goals and the Gunners win, a pretty decent 4.
And for Sunday, we have 4 games. Chelsea, Ipswich, also Chelsea playing in the conference, in this case against 𝐬𝐵𝗲𝗀𝗀, and doing great at home lately in the Premier League. 5 consecutive wins in Stamford Bridge against Brentford. We commented that Brentford are not winning at home, Chelsea are not winning away, so there you go, draw. And Ipswich, Tom, they lost any chance to stay in the Premier League. They are already a championship team.
Yeah, I think so. Look, on Chelsea, their home record this season is an underreported feature of the campaign, mainly because their wins have been so sort of boring and unremarkable. But for them to have 2 defeats at home this season, really good, 9 victories in that time. You got to give him credit for it. And I think as well, you note that Nicholas Jackson and Cole Palmer have been either injured or off form for the majority of the kind of second half of the season. Good to see Palmer getting an assist in their last home game with Tottenham, with that cross to Enzo Fernandez, deep run. But look, they've got some obvious deficiencies. Wesley Fofana was out for ages, came back, got injured immediately, out for the season. Like, you can't build your defence around a croc. With all due respect to Wesley Fofana, it ain't going to happen in the Premier League for him. It ain't going to happen for Chelsea for him. And for the best, I think they move him on and try and buy an actual proper centre-half in the summer. I'm sure they'll buy about 700 of them. We'll see if any of them work out. But that's a clear defensive issue. Goalkeeper's not good enough. Robert Sanchez, he keeps proving it week in, week out. Absolutely fine, I'm sure, if he played for Brentford, but no good for Chelsea if they do want to be in the Champions League and challenging for it next season. So loads of issues to solve there. But the home form across this season has been good. And in terms of Ipswich, I thought that second half performance against Wolverhampton Wanderers last weekend was everything you need to know about Ipswich Town. One home win all season, been pitiful. Liam Delap is more than good enough to be a Premier League striker. The rest of the squad is nowhere near the level required. Goalkeeper, defence, midfield, attacking midfielders, all of it. It is a championship squad. In some instances, people like Sam Morsey, it's a League One squad. Done amazing to be here, but they don't have the quality, they don't have the tenacity, they don't have the organisation, they don't have the tactics, they don't have the manager, they don't have the points, and they don't have a chance here. Chelsea win 1.33, Chelsea win to 0, 2.50. Look at the Palmer market to assist or score. Look at the Jackson market to get back on the scoring trail. Chelsea will win this comfortably by at least 2.
It's appalling, actually, the numbers of the bottom 3. Ipswich 20 points, Leicester 17, Southampton 10. So also to add more to this not really exciting relegation battle, there is no battle at all. Perhaps West Ham could have been involved if the quality of this bottom 3 were better in the relegation battle, because 35 points is not a great tally, but well, they got a draw against Bournemouth. 𝗀𝗏𝗀 came out from the bench and scored a goal, which is news for West Ham. And Liverpool, as we mentioned at the beginning, and you said also last week, they are shaky since the Champions League exit, also Carabao Cup final defeat, and in the league they were winning, yes, but not convincing, and now it came a defeat in Craven Cottage. They were giving the ball so cheaply, they were so clumsy with the possession. We were not used to see Liverpool like this in this season.
Yeah, they look spent, Liverpool, and I think that the gap between them and Arsenal is the key reason why they will still be champions this season. But again, if Arsenal had just bought the striker last summer, there's every chance they could charge it here and catch Liverpool, because the wobble is real. I'd be having real question marks about the future of Virgil van Dijk. Looks to me like another season at the very top would be beyond him. His movement now is getting worse and worse on a weekly basis. Reminds me a bit of 𝐻𝐿𝐴 last season with sort of West Ham, when he was there and he was fantastic, and suddenly, you know, all those things he's doing to get the knees moving stop working, and you go from elite to average to, oh dear, we're in trouble. And it looks to me like Van Dijk is on that very slippery slope. Already losing Alexander-Arnold. Salah will re-sign, but again, I'd have my question marks about that as well, with his age and real serious drop-off in form in the last 5 or 6 weeks. So, issues there for Liverpool, absolutely. The good news for them is West Ham are useless. I will just mention Niclas Füllkrug, actually. You mentioned him there. If he could have been fit this season, I think West Ham would have had a good season. I think 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 would still be there because he's so good. Like, he is such a huge cut above everybody else in that team. And when he came on against Bournemouth, you were like, oh, look at this guy. Bundling past people. His passing on the chest and the head is phenomenal. It's so good. But you can't have someone who misses 4 months and 3 months. And no team could handle that. Look at Arsenal right now without a striker. It's costing them on a weekly basis, and West Ham are on the level of Arsenal. So to have not had Niclas Füllkrug destroyed the season for West Ham. It was built around him coming in and scoring 15 to 20 goals in a front three of Füllkrug, Bowen and Kudus. Could have been amazing. And you just noticed when he came on against Bournemouth, suddenly there was presence. That first half, Bournemouth could have won it 4 or 5-0. And you see that a lot. Why? Because before that, Antonio used to hold the ball up for West Ham and bring people up the field. And without any striker for the entirety of the season, West Ham have struggled, which made the stupid signing of Evan Ferguson in January seem all the more baffling, someone who simply finished at top level. So, look, on another year, I think West Ham could stand a chance here. I'm interested to see if Füllkrug starts. They have, I think, Southampton next week, West Ham, so they might sort of save him for that. Game they win, move to 37. Ipswich to come, get to 40, and you've kind of done your job. So, look, take the Liverpool win at 1.29. West Ham have a terrible record at Anfield. 1 win there since 1963. That came under 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 when 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 think Liverpool win, but not particularly convincingly. I'd expect goals in both halves. If you do feel particularly brave, I have picked out the first handicap of value. It's minus 3.5, comes in at 7. I don't think that'll happen. I think Liverpool will probably win this 2-0. But if you feel brave, if they get 2, they could go on to get 3, 4, 5 late on, because West Ham have really checked out on this season.
Wolves Tottenham is the next game. Wolves absolutely safe after beating Ipswich, coming back from behind, 3 consecutive wins, with Larsen as the hero of the last month or the last weeks, and Spurs. Tom, thinking about Eintracht Frankfurt, they beat Southampton, but they've been switched off from the Premier League the whole season. So good odds to back Wolves somehow, I guess.
I mean, plenty of credit to Wolves, right? Because 5-6 weeks ago, they were still in massive trouble. They were looking at Ipswich Town. They were maybe in the bottom 3. 𝐿𝐴𝐿 𝐿𝐿 got sent off in the FA Cup against Bournemouth, and you thought, blimey, they could be in trouble here. And they go on to get 10 points from the 12 available against teams around them. I mean, it's a great run of fixtures. If you're going to try and stay in the league and you have a run of Everton, Southampton, West Ham and Ipswich, who are the teams directly around you, one after the other, if you can win those games, which they more or less have, bar Everton, you're going to shoot up the table. And now they are looking at a potentially comfortable mid-table finish. So incredible credit to Strand Larsen, as you mentioned, but also to 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿 and Andre in central midfield, to 𝗪𝗪𝗏 at centre-half, I think has been really, really good, to Ryan Ait-Nouri, one or two others. I mean, Vitor Pereira, I think he's a nutter, and he's not going to last very long at Wolverhampton Wanderers. This is a squad that's still far, far too emotional. They've got all sorts of problems, some of these players. And I'd expect heavy changes at Wolves this summer, but huge credit to this group and doing most of it without 𝐿𝐴𝐿 as well. And I just wonder how much they like 𝐿𝐴𝐿, not as a player, but as a person, considering that when he's out, they look a lot better. So we'll see how that one develops. In terms of Tottenham, look, they're always going to beat Southampton, as we predicted. I thought elements of their performance against Chelsea were quite good. The changes 𝗵𝗶𝗀 made, Pape Sarr coming on did make a positive impact, but I think they have been lacking central striker for a few weeks now. Solanke's bang off form. There's no rotation for Richarlison. Matthias Tell Don't know what he is. Certainly not a central striker. Why they bought him, I don't really know. And Romero and Van de Ven look incredibly rusty. Of course they do. They barely played for weeks and months on end. And so they'll be hoping they just are able to get them to key form for both Frankfurt games. So it makes this sort of irrelevant. I think just because it's either side of Frankfurt, I'll just pip for Wolves here at 2.30. Strand Larsen scores and Wolves will win. It's been happening recently. Ipswich and West Ham. Why not this one again? Strand Larsen scores and Wolves win. And I think they're going to edge a narrow game here. Don't dismiss the draw, but I would just shade for Wolves.
And a very good football game, it should be Newcastle Man United. Thinking about Newcastle, of course, fighting for the Champions League. It would be a great success if they qualify in the top 5 boost after winning the Carabao Cup. And Man United is another team as Tottenham thinking in the Europa League, Tom. So Newcastle to win 1.7, still low, but there is no way that I'm backing Man United here.
No, agree completely. I think that that Newcastle are on the charge for Champions League qualification. If I was to take a bet today on who would make it, I'd look at them taking 5th over Chelsea, who seem to be wobbling. I think winning that Carabao Cup has clearly given them a massive boost. The victory over Brentford was hard fought, but well earned. If there was any talk of a hangover from the Carabao Cup, we did not see that in that game. And I think that's really encouraging for Newcastle. If 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻 is fit, he's the best striker in the division right now, who is fit. I think in Murphy and in Gordon, who should be back. I think they've got 2 really good buzzy players. Harvey Barnes, been a bit nothing, been a bit meh, but certainly gives you something in a game like this. Midfield is fantastic. Bruno Tonali and Joe Linton. I wonder about the future of Tonali. A few reports about him going back to Italy. I think that would probably suit him as opposed to staying at Newcastle for another year, get your money back and reinvest. I think that would make sense for Newcastle. And of course, defensively without Botman, look, 1 or 2 problems there. But Man United again, I mean, if you watch the Manchester derby, I mentioned earlier in the programme, I walked away from it. Like, the Man United conversation has not changed. He needs to bring in and wants to bring in 4 or 5 players who can play the way that he wants. It's going to be a very competitive market for Man United this summer because they're not particularly attractive, I don't think, for those big money signings. You're looking at a bunch of £20 million signings. And you can understand why there's conversations about selling Bruno Fernandes. Not that he's not their best player, but they need to raise money to invest in a bunch of players that this manager wants. And I'm not convinced Bruno Fernandes is someone that if he could pick anyone in world football, he would want, because he's such a sort of special individual talent. Is he a system player? Is he an Amorim system player? Look, again, I don't know, but like they need to raise money, Man United. The money is not coming in. They've overspent on wages and players. They're not in the Champions League. Even if they're through in the Europa League, they will not make a lot of money in it unless they qualify to the Champions League by winning the competition, which again, I wouldn't particularly back them to do as yet. So it's all a bit of a mess. Leads to this game where their eye will not be on the prize. So take the Newcastle United win at 1.7. I'd look at quite a comfortable Newcastle win by at least 2 goals. Minus 1.5 is 2.88. And as with every Newcastle game, 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻 scores, Newcastle win, usually doubles your money.
And the last game on Monday, we have Bournemouth, Fulham, 2 teams that I think they've done a great season because they should be more in the bottom half and they are in the top half of the standings. Even Fulham with some chances to go to Europe is going to be very difficult. Beating Liverpool only 3 points away from Aston Villa. Bournemouth is kind of the opposite. No wins in the last 6 Premier League games.
Yeah, and I think you saw it a bit against West Ham as well at the weekend, that the well is dry in terms of what these players have got left to give. They've had so many players out all season, Bournemouth. So for them to have been in the conversation for European qualifications is incredibly impressive. But I think West Ham should have won that game in the end. After a really strong first half from Bournemouth, they faded when West Ham brought on Fulkrug. And if it wasn't for a dodgy decision to give a free kick and a tap-in for Evan-Nilsson, they actually didn't create much in the second half, Bournemouth, compared to the first. Evan-Nilsson's form is a real bright spot, scoring plenty of goals. If he could have been fit all season, we're having a different conversation. If Tyler Adams, who played well at the weekend, could have been fit all season, we're having a different conversation. But ifs and buts, candy and nuts and all that sort of stuff, there's no Nal. Kluivert may well be missing, who's been fantastic this season, top scorer. Loads of issues there for Bournemouth to try and deal with. and the form has sort of gone off a cliff a little bit. Fulham are the most unpredictable team in the country when we do these. I have no idea at this point. Like, every time I think they're going to lose, they win. Every time I think they're going to win, they lose. Like, look at the Liverpool game and then look at the Crystal Palace game in the FA Cup. Look at Brighton in the league. Like, they've got a lot of qualities, Fulham. And if they get it right, they can beat anybody, as we saw last weekend. Raul Jimenez, excellent. Rodrigo Muniz can have excellent days. 𝗻𝗵𝗿 has been very consistent all season and effective. Robinson centre-half. Anderson centre-half. Sorry, Robinson full-back. Loads of good stuff about Fulham. But then when they put in a great performance, you think, yeah, they've cracked it. And you see them again, you think, oh, what's this then? Like, I think first goal is very crucial in Fulham games. They do seem to crumble a bit when they've conceded the first. If they score the first, you can see the confidence bloom in them. And they will create chances. So really, really interesting game this. Frankly, screams draw at 3.4 with both teams scoring. I go with that only because so many Bournemouth games this season that maybe could have been wins have been draws. 1-1 draws at home, Brighton, West Ham again away this weekend, the draw at Tottenham. There are lots of games where they do have a soft centre. I think Howson at centre-half has been talked about like the next Nemanja Vidic. Still seems like a young player and could do with maybe a couple more years at Bournemouth before making any sort of move away. That's true of one of the other two players they've got there, 𝗵𝐻𝐿𝐵𝗫, would go in that group as well. So look at the draw here. I think both teams will score. Wouldn't be surprised to see someone pip it 2-1, but draw 1-1, 0-0, 2-2. I think it's going to be fun.
Okay, Tom Rennie, thank you. Thanks, guys, for watching. Of course, before we say goodbye, take a look at our tipster competitions. If you are a fan of the Premier League, you have a Premier League One where you can win some cash prizes. And of course, we still have rivals where you can create your own competitions and challenge your friends. Tom, let's go with your safe bet.
Safe bet this week is Aston Villa to win at Southampton. Saints are down. Villa can make heavy rotations. They will win. It's 1.55.
And the ACCA?
3-team ACCA. Aston Villa to win at Southampton. Nottm Forest to beat Everton. And Chelsea over Ipswich. That treble comes in at 4.13.
Good luck, guys. Bye-bye.